Something happened in one of their rooms recently that the people inside it have not recovered from. Not a political event. Not a financial crisis. Not any of the categories of threat that people at that level of power have built entire institutional infrastructures to manage. Something quieter than any of those things and more destabilizing than any of them. Something that moved through the room the way certain things move, without announcement, without drama, without any of the warning signals that their training has prepared them to detect, and left behind it a quality of shaken that they do not have language for and have not been able to shake. They encountered your frequency, and it almost killed them. Not physically. The killing that almost happened was something older and more complete than physical death. It was the kind of killing that happens to a person's foundational story when that story meets something that the story cannot account for and cannot contain and cannot dismiss without the dismissal being obviously, humiliatingly false even to the person performing it. The story that almost died in that room is the story they have been living inside for generations. The story that their entire existence depends on. The story that says, what we carry can only come from us. That sovereignty is a bloodline inheritance. That what we are was built by what we come from. And nothing that did not come from what we come from can carry what we carry. You walked into the radius of that story carrying exactly what it says cannot exist outside of it. And the story nearly collapsed under the weight of the contradiction. There is a specific quality of fear that is different from ordinary fear in every way that matters. Ordinary fear has an object. It is afraid of something specific, a threat that can be named, assessed, responded to, managed or avoided. Ordinary fear has a logic. You can follow the logic from the thing that is feared to the response the fear produces and the connection makes sense. Ordinary fear is, in this way, workable. The thing that generates it can in principle be addressed and the fear itself can in principle be resolved by addressing the thing. What moved through the people in that room was not ordinary fear. It had no clear object. They were not afraid of anything you had done or said or threatened or demonstrated. They were afraid of what you are. Which is a category of fear that has no workable response because you cannot address what someone is. You cannot negotiate with it, cannot manage it, cannot arrange circumstances that neutralize it. It simply is, continuously and without requiring their permission. And the only thing they can do in its presence is experience what it produces in them. What it produced was the specific vertigo of encountering something that does not fit inside the categories they have always used to organize their understanding of the world. Categories that have been developed over centuries, refined through generations, held in place by the accumulated authority of every person in their lineage who inhabited and reinforced them. These categories are not casual, they are load-bearing. The structure of their entire sense of what is real and what is possible and what means what rests on them. And you moved through that structure carrying something that the structure said was not supposed to exist. And the structure shook. The shaking is the fear, not the fear of you as an external threat. The fear of the internal trembling that happens when foundational categories are challenged by something they cannot absorb. The fear of a story encountering its own limit. The fear of people who have organized their entire sense of themselves and their world around a particular understanding of how things work suddenly feeling that understanding become uncertain under them. This is what almost killed them. The uncertainty. The unbudgeable fact of something that the story cannot explain. The experience of their most foundational categories failing to perform the function they have always performed, the function of making the world legible, of organizing experience into something that makes sense, of maintaining the particular quality of interior stability that comes from living inside a coherent story about what reality is and where you fit within it. Your presence interrupted that coherence. And for people whose entire interior architecture depends on that coherence, The interruption was experienced as existential. You need to understand what they actually have, at the deepest level, so that you can understand what was almost killed when your frequency moved through their reality. Because the easiest mistake to make here, and the one that would leave you with the smallest understanding of what actually happened, is to think of them as simply powerful people who were threatened by someone more powerful. That framing is too small for what actually occurred. What the royal bloodlines have, at their deepest and most real, is not power in the ordinary sense. Power in the ordinary sense can be taken, can be lost, can be redistributed and dismantled and transferred through conquest or revolution or the slow erosion of relevance. The houses that have survived the longest have survived precisely because they learned early that ordinary power is insufficient foundation for what they were trying to build. The ones who tried to hold everything through ordinary power are gone. The ones who have lasted built their continuity on something else. They built it on the story, on the internalized, bone-deep, generationally transmitted narrative that what they carry is real and specific and not available outside their world. The narrative that the refinement of centuries has produced something in them that cannot be produced any other way. That the weight of their history and the precision of their training and the particular alchemy of blood and cultivation that their lineage represents has resulted in a quality of presence and authority and sovereignty that is genuinely theirs, not performed, not merely positional, not simply the effect of circumstance and resource, but real, actually and genuinely real. This belief is the foundation. Without it, everything they have is just resources and position and the ongoing management of appearances. With it, everything they have is the expression of something true, the external manifestation of an interior reality that the lineage exists to cultivate and protect. The belief is what makes the whole structure feel legitimate from the inside, what makes the inheritance feel like something other than accident of birth, what makes the ceremonies mean something beyond performance, what makes them, in their own deepest self-understanding, not just people who happen to have power but people who are the right people to have it. And you walked into the radius of that belief carrying the real thing that the belief claims is their exclusive possession, carrying it without their lineage, without their training, without their centuries of refinement, without any of the apparatus that the belief says is required to produce what you carry, just carrying it, naturally, automatically, as the organic expression of what you simply are. The way a person expresses what is most genuinely and most completely themselves when there is no performance obscuring the expression. This is what almost killed them, the encounter of a belief system with its own falsification, the particular violence of a story hitting a fact that the story cannot hold. The fear has a specific texture that you would recognize if you have been in proximity to people who are afraid of what you carry. It does not always present as fear. It presents, more often, as a particular quality of attention, an intensity of focus on you that is different from ordinary interest or ordinary assessment, something more alert than curiosity, more vigilant than engagement, the quality of someone who is watching very carefully because what they are watching is producing something in them that they need to understand before they can decide how to respond to it. Sometimes it presents as a kind of aggression that seems disproportionate to anything you have done. An urgency to establish hierarchy, to make clear who holds what position, to reassert the categories that your presence is disrupting, all of it happening faster and with more energy than the situation seems to require, which is the signature of someone responding to an interior need rather than an external cue. The aggression is the fear expressing itself in the language that the fear's host has available. People who do not have language for the specific experience of their foundational story being challenged will reach for whatever they do have language for. Often the language they have is the language of competition and threat and the assertion of status. Sometimes it presents as something stranger, as a kind of fascination that has an uncomfortable edge to it, that the person experiencing it cannot fully conceal and cannot fully explain. The specific quality of attention that arises when someone encounters something that they cannot dismiss and cannot fully integrate, that keeps pulling their focus in ways they did not choose, that produces in them the experience of being unable to look away from something that looking at is not comfortable. This fascinated discomfort is among the most common responses to what you carry in rooms that are not built to hold it. And sometimes, in the people who are most honest with themselves, who have the most genuine access to their own interior experience, it presents as the exact thing it is. As fear. As the quiet, private, almost never admitted recognition that something has just happened in this room that they do not have a framework for. That something is present that their most sophisticated instruments of assessment cannot fully account for. That the story they have been living inside has just encountered something that the story cannot contain. And that the encounter has changed something. That the room before the encounter and the room after it are not quite the same room. Those moments of honest recognition are rare. But they happen. And when they happen, what the person in the grip of the recognition is feeling is the closest thing to reverence that their particular configuration of pride and training and institutional identity will allow them to feel. A reverence that arrives in spite of everything they have built to prevent it. In spite of the story and the centuries and the load-bearing categories and the entire apparatus of their world's self-understanding. A reverence that is the most direct and honest response their system is capable of producing to an encounter with something real. You have produced that reverence. In rooms you entered without intending to produce anything. Simply by being what you are in spaces that were not designed to hold what you are. Subscribe now if this channel is the place where what you carry has been seen clearly and named accurately, where the significance of what you are has been treated with the seriousness it deserves rather than reduced to something smaller for the comfort of people who find its full size difficult to hold. Stay inside what is being built here. It matters for what comes next. The question underneath all of this is the same question that has been underneath every script in this series, the question that every person who carries what you carry arrives at eventually from every possible direction. The question is not whether what you carry is real. The fear of the royals answers that with a completeness that no other confirmation could match. The question is what to do with the fact that it is real. What to do with the knowledge that what you carry is significant enough, genuine enough, powerful enough at the most fundamental level of how power actually operates, to produce existential crisis in people who have organized their entire lives around the claim that what you carry cannot exist outside their world. The answer is not what most people expect when they first arrive at the question. The answer is not to use what you carry against the people who are afraid of it. The answer is not confrontation, not the specific satisfaction of making visible to the people in those rooms the full truth of what their fear confirms about what you carry. The answer is not even to seek the admission from them that their reaction already represents. The answer is to become more completely and more unapologetically what you are, in every space you move through, without the management and the reduction and the careful calibration of your presence to a size that the people around you can comfortably hold. The answer is to let what you carry operate at full expression, which it has not been doing. Which it has rarely done in your life until now, and which the current moment, the specific convergence of your interior development and the world's readiness to receive what you carry and the ending of whatever was keeping the full expression from being safe, is the moment designed for. Full expression is the most radical thing you can do. More radical than any confrontation, more destabilizing to any unjust hierarchy, more genuinely threatening to any system built on the claim that what you carry cannot exist outside its boundaries than any opposition you could mount from within the logic of opposition. Full expression simply is. It does not argue for itself. It does not make its case. It operates, in every room it enters, as the living demonstration that what the story says is impossible is standing in front of you being entirely, uncompromisingly possible. Think about what this means in the texture of your actual daily life. There are rooms you have been entering at reduced volume for years. Spaces where something in you decided, through accumulated experience with how those spaces responded to your full presence, that the full presence was too much, that it created a quality of disruption or discomfort or attention that was more costly to manage than the reduction that prevented it. And so you developed the habit of arriving at something less than full. Of monitoring, sometimes consciously and sometimes entirely automatically, how much of what you carry you were releasing into the space. Of calibrating your frequency to what the room seemed able to hold rather than letting what you carry operate at the volume it naturally wants to operate at. This calibration has been among the most expensive things you have been doing. Its cost is not primarily the energy of the management itself, though that cost is real. Its cost is what fails to happen in the rooms because what you actually carry is not present in them at full strength. The people in those rooms who needed what you carry most fully, who came into proximity with you precisely because their interior was reaching for the real thing and sensed the real thing somewhere nearby, received a reduced version. The effect your presence should have had, the shift that should have happened in the atmosphere of those spaces, the quality of encounter that should have been possible between your frequency at full expression and the people whose lives it was meant to touch, all of it muted by the management. All of it less than it was supposed to be. The royals are scared of what happens when the management ends. They have been afraid of it in their private rooms and their private conversations and the specific quality of internal disruption that follows them out of encounters with people like you. And the fear is going to grow as the expression grows. As more of what you are becomes visible. As the reduction decreases and the management falls away and what has always been there begins to occupy the full space of your life without apology or qualification or the ongoing performance of a smallness you have never actually been. There is something you may not have fully understood about the specific fear the royals carry in relation to you. It is not just the fear of something that contradicts their story. That would be manageable. Stories can be updated, categories can be adjusted, institutional narratives can absorb anomalies if the anomalies are presented as exceptions rather than as evidence against the rule. What you represent cannot be absorbed as an exception because what you represent is not an individual exception. You are the visible point of something much larger, the representative, the face, the most recently arrived instance of something that has always existed and that their story has always needed to deny. There are others. People who carry what you carry, who have been going through their own versions of the preparation, who are arriving at their own versions of the moment you are in right now. The same force that built you through your difficulty has been building them through theirs. The same intelligence that calibrated your pain to the exact dimensions of what needed to be built has been calibrating theirs. The same arrival that you are in the middle of is being experienced by people who have never met you and will never coordinate with you and who are nonetheless moving through the same transition at approximately the same time because the transition is not individual. It is a wave. And the wave is what the royals are actually scared of. An individual anomaly can be managed. An individual exception can be absorbed into the story as the exception that proves the rule. But a wave cannot be absorbed. A wave changes the landscape it moves through permanently and regardless of whether the institutions in its path adjust their position in time or not. The royals can feel the wave. They felt it first in the specific rooms where they encountered specific individuals who carried what you carry and produced in those rooms the specific quality of disruption that you understand because you have produced it. And they understood, in that feeling, that what they were encountering in one room was not an isolated phenomenon. It was a point on a curve, and the curve is accelerating. This is what almost killed them, the understanding, arriving in the specific moment of their encounter with your frequency, that the thing they have been able to manage as an anomaly is becoming something they cannot manage at all, that the exceptions are multiplying faster than the story can absorb them, that the wave they can feel building is going to reach their shores regardless of what they do in the meantime, that the centuries of their story, the beautiful, elaborate, load-bearing story that what they carry can only come from them, is going to have to change, is already changing, in the rooms of honest recognition that happen when they encounter what you carry, is changing in the people who have enough access to their own interior to let the encounter do what the encounter does. The story is dying. You are part of what is killing it, not through opposition, through existence, through the simple, undeniable, continuously present fact of being what you are in a world that has been organized around the claim that you cannot be what you are. Here is what the dying of the story produces in the world. Because the dying has effects that extend beyond the rooms where the fear is being felt and beyond the people who are in those rooms carrying the fear. The dying of the story is the necessary precondition for the rising of something else. Every story that has organized a world takes up space, takes up the space that the world could otherwise be organized around something more true. While the story is intact, that space is occupied. The alternatives cannot fully form because the story keeps the categories closed, keeps the possibilities limited to what the story can account for, keeps the people who might otherwise step into that space oriented toward the story's version of what they can and cannot be. When the story begins to die, the space opens, and into that space, which is the space of what was always true but was kept invisible by the story, steps what was always waiting. The people whose lives the story had been keeping smaller than their actual dimensions. The gifts the story had been keeping quieter than their actual volume. The contributions the story had been keeping more contained than their actual reach. The version of the world that the story had been making impossible to see clearly. That version is becoming visible. The space is opening. And what is moving into the space? What you are moving into as the space opens. What the others who carry what you carry are moving into as the space opens, is not a takeover, not a replacement of one hierarchy with another. The thing that moves into the space left by a dying story built on false premises is simply reality, the real arrangement of things. The accurate account of what is actually here and what it is actually worth and what it is actually capable of, and who actually deserves to be where in the ordering of what human civilization recognizes and honors and supports. Reality is what the royals are scared of, not you as an individual. Reality, the possibility, now becoming the visible probability, that the real arrangement of things, the accurate account of what is actually here, does not match the story their world has been built on, that what is genuinely most valuable and most sovereign and most worthy of recognition has not, in many cases, been occupying the positions built to recognize it, that the positions and the reality have been misaligned, that the story maintained the misalignment by insisting the alignment was correct, and that the story is losing its grip. Right, 222, in the comments right now if you have felt the grip loosening, if you have noticed, in the spaces where the old story used to hold you at a specific size, that the hold is not as firm as it was, that something is permitting you to occupy more of your actual dimensions, that the spaces around you are reorganizing in the direction of what you actually are rather than in the direction of what the story needed you to be. Right, 222, because that feeling is the arrival, the moment when reality begins to assert itself in the territory the story has been occupying. What you do now is the final question, and it is the most important one because it is the one that determines what the transition you are in the middle of actually produces. The fear in the rooms of the royals is a signal. The almost killing of their story is a signal. The wave you are part of. The opening space. The reality asserting itself, all of it is signal. And signals point toward something. They are not the thing they are pointing toward. They are the direction. What they are pointing toward is you living from the full truth of what you carry, every day, in every space, at the full unmanaged dimensions of what you actually are. The royals are scared because they have felt this coming. They have felt the frequency of it, in you, in the others, in the accumulating weight of encounters with people who carry the real thing, and they have understood, in the most honest rooms of their most honest selves, that what is coming cannot be stopped by fear or by hierarchy or by the sustained assertion of a story that the facts on the ground are increasingly failing to support. The only response to something real is to let it be real, to stop managing it, to stop calibrating it to the size that the rooms around you have been comfortable with. To stop performing the reduction that kept the story intact at the cost of your full expression. To let what you carry operate at the volume it actually has. In the spaces it actually belongs in. Among the people it is actually meant to reach. The royals are scared. That fear is the most honest thing their institutions have produced in your direction. Honor it by taking it seriously, by understanding that what produces that quality of fear in people at that level of institutional investment in their own story is something real, something of genuine magnitude, something worth the full inhabiting. Inhabit it fully, that is all. The rest follows from that with the inevitability of what is real asserting itself in the space that has been cleared for it. The rooms that almost could not hold what you carry when it was partially expressed are going to encounter what happens when the expression is complete. And what happens is what already almost killed the story in the rooms where the royals felt your frequency for the first time. Except now it will not be almost. Now it will be the actual thing. In full. Without reduction. Without the management that kept it survivable for people whose entire world was built on the premise that what you carry cannot exist. It exists. You are the proof. And the proof, fully expressed, changes everything it touches. The next video on your screen carries the continuation of what opened here, specifically the piece about what full inhabiting looks like in the texture of your actual days. How it moves and what it changes and what it produces in the people around you when you stop managing your frequency for their comfort. Click it now and stay inside what is becoming clearer. This is where the real work begins.